You were not called. Why do you enter?
Because no one would answer my questions.
They say in the old villages, the ones where the Iroko trees grew taller than memory, there are places that do not belong to the living. Every child in Nkwanta knew about the shrine at the edge of the village. They knew it the way they knew not to touch the cooking fire, not from explanation, but from the fear they saw in their elders' eyes whenever someone looked too long in its direction. Every child obeyed that fear. Every child except Kofi. Kofi was 12 years old and already too curious for anyone's comfort. He had asked the elders about the shrine 17 times. He had counted. Each time, the answer was the same. A long look, a slow shake of the head, and the same 4 words spoken like a closing door. It is not for you. But Kofi had noticed something the elders never mentioned. On the nights when the moon disappeared, when the sky went completely dark, the shrine glowed. Not like fire, not like lantern light, like something breathing. He had been watching for 3 months. Tonight, the moon was gone. By midnight, the village had folded into itself. The last lantern had gone out, the last voice had quieted, even the dogs had stopped their nightly arguments and lay still, ears flat, as if they too understood that tonight the air was different. From 3 compounds away, Kofi could see it, the shrine, pulsing gently in the dark, amber light pressing through cracked stone like a heartbeat that had been waiting a long time to be heard. He picked up his lantern. There was a line in the earth around the shrine, drawn in white powder that the elders renewed every dry season, without ever explaining why.
Kofi stood before it for a long time, long enough for the part of him that was afraid to make its full argument, long enough for him to hear it, weigh it, and set it aside. His foot crossed the line. The powder flared beneath his heel, cold gold, then dark, and behind him, where his footprint broke the circle, the line sealed itself shut. He was inside now, and whatever lived in the shrine knew it. The inside of the shrine was smaller than he expected and larger than should have been possible. The walls were covered in carvings, symbols he had seen on the oldest buildings in the village, but never this dense, never this alive, because they were alive, moving, rearranging themselves in the lantern light, like sentences being rewritten by a mind he could not see. And then, one by one, the faces came. Not carved faces, not painted faces, faces pressing outward from the stone itself, cheekbones, brows, closed eyes slowly opening. The faces of people who had been dead longer than the village had existed. They looked at the boy, and one of them turned directly toward him.
It rose from the stone, the way smoke rises from a fire that has just been extinguished. Reluctant, then inevitable. The ancestor was tall, impossibly tall for the small room, and yet the room held it, wrapped in cloth that moved without wind, eyes that burned like the last embers of something enormous.
You were not called. Why do you enter?
Because no one would answer my questions.
The spirit was still for a long moment. Then, from the corner of one burning eye, a single tear fell, liquid gold, catching the lantern light as it dropped to the earth floor. Kofi did not know it then, but that tear was the spirit recognizing something it had not seen in 100 years. a child who would not be silenced. What happened next, Kofi would spend the rest of his life trying to describe and never fully succeed. The walls fell away, or perhaps the world expanded. The visions came like water breaking through a dam, his father's back disappearing down a red road, the village cracked and dry under a sun that gave no mercy. A version of himself he didn't recognize, older, robed, seated before people who were listening. Flames, then floods, then the ancestors, dozens of them, dancing in golden light, laughing, calling to him in a language that somehow his bones understood, even though his mouth did not know the words. He grabbed the altar stone. He held on. He did not run. He did not fall. He stood in the center of everything his bloodline had ever been and ever would be, and he held on. In the darkness, something was placed in his hand.
He walked out as the first light of morning split the sky. His uniform was singed at the hem. His lantern was gone, but his eyes were calm in a way they had never been before. The restless, knocking curiosity that had lived in them his whole life had been replaced by something quieter, something that had been answered. Mama Efwa dropped her water pot. Kofi did not stop walking. He opened his left fist just briefly, just enough to see, and there it was, a single seed, small, golden, glowing very faintly, the way an ember glows after the fire is gone, but the heat remembers. He closed his hand around it and kept walking. No one in Nkwanta ever spoke about what Kofi planted, or where, or what grew from it in the years that followed. But the elders stopped giving the same answer when children asked questions. Some doors, it turned out, were not locked to keep things out. They were locked to find out who was brave enough to knock.